I've always been quite an enemy of Forgiven, so him coming back in the scene since he was gone for the summer split is going to be really interesting because I feel like he was kind of miles ahead of me in spring split, so showing up in the spring split this time around will be really important because I do want to beat him, because I feel like he was just so far ahead of me in spring split last year, and I didn't deserve to win it when I got so outplayed by him every time, and he didn't deserve to be where he was at the time. Because he was probably the best AD we had in Europe back then. But nowadays, I don't know, I think I've grown a lot. Maybe he has as well, so we will see. But he'll be my biggest enemy for sure this split.
Oh, we're gonna see now the rivalry between Reckless and Forgiven on the Rift. Welcome back to our final match of the week here in Berlin as two of the best teams in Europe, Elements and SK Gaming, prepare to face off. Now, these two squads will only meet once more before the end of the split, so a win here could set one team's pace for weeks to come. We're gonna start off with the lineup for Elements on the blue side. In the top lane, Wicked, we have Shook, Froggen in the mid lane, at AD carry, Reckless, supported by Nif and their coach Mart. Elements are coming into this one. Yesterday, they had a very convincing win and a very aggressive win, which is not something we see from that often, which could have set them up for this one.
Yeah, you know, Meet Your Makers, they're struggling. They have Corey back. They're not performing to the levels that they want to. But that doesn't take anything away from the fact that Elements were so coordinated and so aggressive. Something that's a bit unconventional with their team. They tend to play a lot safer, tend to sit back. But you look at how the tower dove the inner mid turret towards the mid-late stages of the game. Elements were relentless, and it's something I'd like to see more of from the team.
Yeah, and Reckless must have gotten a huge confidence boost yesterday as well coming to this one. Even looking at the video, I think he really also needs a boost because he knows how strong Forgiven has been playing. And that's actually our featured matchup for this one. How can it differ? Be the AD carries going up against each other. How do you think it's going to work out?
I have to give the advantage to Forgiven, but only basing on the fact that I've played with that guy and I have huge respect for him. I think Reckless has grown as a player, obviously since Spring Split of last season when they met one another, but Forgiven still has this edge because he has an inner drive that just translates to his teammates too. So it's not just that he makes himself look good and the bottom lane look good, but he also makes his team overall just look better because he's the driving force behind it.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. I'm also interested to see how Nif and Enrated are going to match up against one another, because you've got these two superstar AD carries who are in some ways very similar, but then you look at the supports and they're completely different. Nif is playing a lot more meta champions. Enrated is playing the supporty. The Lulu has been his most successful champion thus far, and I really want to see how the duos pair up. If we are lucky enough to get the head-to-head, we might be more likely to see a lane swap.
Yeah, very good point, and amazing. You summed it up yesterday at the end of the show. You said all the storylines are coming together here. One of those is Shook, that also had a very impressive game yesterday on Rengar.
Yeah, Shook is just Jekyll and Hyde, basically. One game, he will completely trash the opponent. We saw that with Najin Whiteshield back at Worlds. And we saw it yesterday. This 5-1-19 Rengar coming in, perfect kill participation, perfect play on the mid lane, shutting out Corey, allowing Frog to snowball and roam off of lanes. That's the Shook that people want to see and expect to see when they see Elements. And he just has to show up every game like that, and they would actually probably be the unbeatable team. But that's up to him and the consistency that he has to bring in.
We'll see if they're unbeatable in this one because they're up against SK Gaming on the red side. Let's take a look at their lineup. Freddy 122, Sven Skaren, Fox, Forgiven, and rated and coached by Inner Flame. Now, they won, but H2K had quite a showing yesterday. SK had to get back in the game. Can they defeat that record? They are the only team that's undefeated in here. What will it come down to?
Can they defend their record? Yes. Will they defend their record? No, if Elements play like yesterday. I think when you look at these two teams, SK Gaming has been performing at a higher average level across all of their games, but I also feel they have a slightly lower skill ceiling than Elements. I think if Elements play at their best and SK play at their best, I think Elements are just marginally better than that of SK.
Yeah, I completely agree, actually. As I said, that Shook is one guy that can actually carry a game solo. We saw it back when he was on CW, still in the challenge scene. He had really great games, and his skill ceiling, like everyone described him when he came into the scene as the guy that could potentially be the best jungler in Europe. And he has shown that potential. If he actually is able to call that up and translate it into leads onto lanes, maybe not even just Frog, but also maybe the bottom lane, maybe get Wicked rolling for once. That Alliance team or Elements team now is a scary team to see.
When we were talking after the Fnatic game to Yellowstar, I asked him, who do you think is going to win? He called it out for Elements. One of the things that the Fnatic coach also said, SK Gaming is really good, but they have some things that can be exploited by the enemy team. One of those things that comes to mind might be vision.
I agree, and it is one of these things which is very interesting. SK have this policy where if they're not going to be playing deep or they don't intend to play aggressively, why invest in deep wards? And Rated actually said the words, we don't need vision when we've got brains. And while it has worked for them against most of the other squads, there's a very limited number of teams that can punish you if you don't have the wards up or you don't play with all of the information. Elements could be one of those teams, but like we said, they've been so shaky in their 5 games leading up to this matchup, it's hard for me to say it will be punished.
Yeah, because it is actually really interesting that SK Gaming is a team that is undefeated at the top of the table, yet we seem to be leaning towards Elements. We also haven't touched on Freddy 1-2-2 in that top lane, on Svenskeren, on that synergy, which might be a very important one for SK to get the upper hand here.
Yeah, definitely. Like, we saw Rickard struggling in the early weeks of the season where he was basically shut down, had a horrific game, honestly, versus Fnatic, was 3-13. And if Freddy and Svenskeren are able to shut down Wicked the same way that Huni and Reyno were able to do that, it's going to look scary for Elements.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think my eyes are going to be on Fox this particular matchup. I really want to see how he matches up against Froggen. Fox has performed pretty well, but I think he's also looking very good because his whole team is looking very good. This could be the game where each individual player is tested more than they have been up until this point.
Yeah, I got to ask you guys, predictions, Elements or Fnatic? Go.
Elements or SK?
SK, oh my god. We were talking so much about it. Yeah. I'm so hyped for this game.
Okay, it's fine. I think Elements, but only because Shook had such a great game yesterday, and when Frong also gets rolling, it's like I think he outclasses Fox to a certain extent, because Frong is probably the best mid laner in Europe right now. And if he can get the ball rolling together with Shook, that's going to be really scary.
I think SK is going to win because I don't think Elements can play near perfection 2 games in a row.
All right, well, we will find out. Without further ado, let's kick it over to Pyro and the Fish Show for Champ Select.
Thank you, Shocks. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. This is the big matchup for this week. A fantastic showdown. Every one of these matchups, every lane, the jungle. I'm so excited for this. There's so many crossover champion picks as well. That pick ban alone is going to be crazy to Fishio.
Yeah, and I really want to see if Elements is going to do what they did yesterday. Focus on the mid lane, because that's the only lane where I see Elements being stronger than SK. So camp for Froggen, get him going so he can carry your team to victory.
Yeah, we'll see if they can pull it off again. Can they take down the so far unbeaten SK Gaming? We get into picks and bans right here for Elements versus SK. Zed taken off the board, no surprises. Froggen likes an easy mid lane.
Yeah, 3 bans towards Zed from Elements in the past, actually 4 bans, sorry, with the one yesterday. So they really like to target that one. And Lulu as well, trying to push N-rated off his comfort zone. SK loves to lane swap with Lulu and then fast push down these turrets very early. Elements removing that strategy.
A lot of mid bans actually being spent here. Of course, there's the Kassadin flex pick, but we have mostly seen it in the mid. So exclusively those champions so far. Let's see what else they take off the board. There's the Nidalee. Svenskeren had the biggest impact in all the Nidalee games we saw yesterday and so far, so that'll be unavailable to SK, but this leaves a lot of champions still open. What does SK ban as their last?
And I really feel like Nidalee had to be banned by Elements because SK are so good now in the early game, in the laning phase, and Svenskeren is so aggressive. He invades into the enemy jungle every single time, and wow, Graves' first pick. It's been the most played champion for both Reckless and Forgiven. So far, the first battle has now been won by Elements by getting the Graves.
See Reckless with that little smirk there. He knows he wanted that one. So
give up a lot of picks
leaves a lot of stuff. Yeah, Nar's available, Jarvan's available.
Together.
You mentioned before there's been some counterplay available for it, but still, I mean, you give up a lot just to take this Graves away from Forgiven and to give it to Reckless.
Oh, I see it's open.
Yes.
We have so many power picks open. That's why actually Elements can take Graves, because there are still so many strong picks left that even though SK will get 2 of them, plenty for Elements. Janna open as well if you want some disengage on the support. Obviously both the Leona and Annie, the 2 heavy engage supports we have seen. And this is the first time we see Azir in quite a while, because it used to be banned away here in Europe. He's just so strong. He's a flex pick, mid lane, top lane, doesn't even matter. Good lane matchup, very strong in the lane swap as well. Freddy, he loves to be 1v2 in those lane swaps. Could go for him.
Yeah, Svenskeren, as the timer ticks down, does grab himself the Jarvan. So Gnar's still up here, but there's so much more. I mean, this is really interesting. Froggen's going for the Lissandra. Thinking about it at the very least, he had a great performance on it yesterday. Of course, it could also go to Wicked.
Again, it is a flex pick. It's what we often see here. You don't tell too much by your early picks. Graves is very common here in Europe as the #1 AD carry. Strong laning phase, strong mid game. And also Reckless loves to actually sit in a side lane, and he farms till he's level 11. So he hits that massive power spike of getting, of course, 2 items completed and rank 2 of your ulti. And then you look for team fights from the side of Elements, and that's what he likes to do. I think SK Gaming has to look out for in this game. But for now, Elements still thinking. So many picks open, it's almost impossible to start predicting what's going to get locked in. And Rengar again for Shook. Lissandra is open, then later on for Elements to do exactly the same combo they did yesterday, where Froggen was playing Lissandra and Shook was playing Rengar and just camping that mid lane.
And another hard engage support for Nif here. This time it's Leona, but the Graves Leona lane definitely has some serious inbuilt synergy there, as well as a lot of roaming potential. SK taking their time to find an answer.
Yeah, normally when Forgiven can get Graves, he locks in Lucian, and he tries to play the same way, very aggressive in these mid-game teamfights, dashing in and out, and has this fantastic ability to always find farm on the map and get ahead of his get ahead of the other AD carry.
It's going to be hard to do against Reckless, though.
Yeah, he's an AD carry who used to do exactly the same last year, where obviously Forgiven was not in the LCS during the summer split, and he will go towards that Lucian pick for him, so no real surprise here.
Also, Fox's Ahri too. I like this if they do go for it. There's a lot of catch and a lot of poke.
But honestly, Elements, they can go Lissandra again.
It's true.
There's no disengage on the side of SK. Janna could be a potential last pick for them, but Lissandra Rengar, the same combination we saw yesterday, can be locked in by Elements. And then Wicked. He's going to have to deal with Azir in the top lane. Aurelia is actually banned away, so never mind that point for me. But now it will still be open if you just want a fairly standard tank.
Yeah, they have that potential. Elements taking their time as well, but this is not unusual for them too. They tend to take the full clock rotation out and debate what they want. Here, once again, against SK Gaming.
If they do take the Gnar, I think we're going to see a lane swap coming in from Elements, because that's a very, very tough lane against Azir. Alright, so we get again the Lissandra, as we talked about for Froggen. Same comp between him and Shook, so look for a lot of ganks in this mid lane, especially after level 6 from Shook. Rumble into Azir is a very risky matchup though by Wicked, because Azir will take full control of that lane and just poke him out.
Yeah, Wicked's been a bit of a mixed bag too. He had a really great performance on the Gnar yesterday. However, they've been a bit shaky in some of the other matchups, so I want to see how he does with this Rumble.
Yeah, and I think that's why he's actually locking in Rumble, because you don't really need too many items on it. You don't have to completely outfarm the other top lane. You just need your early magic penetration, and you are very useful in team fights. And because again, there's so much AoE, CC, and engage from Elements, it's all about just flying in there in the mid game. Every single champion has some sort of AoE, and you just smack it down on SK Gaming if they get caught out of position. Janna needs to be the lock-in from rated here. They need to get some disengage to stop Elements from diving onto them. Morgana would be the only other option for him.
Yeah, I think that made the most sense. They do lock it in. Now the comps are filled out. Another squishy composition from SK, but they've been trusting it so far, and it's yet to lead them astray.
Yeah, and 2 comps that spike very hard in the mid game. AD carries, mid laners, same deal. And obviously the Rumble pick from Elements, meaning here for SK, do they manage to go late game? Azir will completely outscale a Rumble. That could be the go-to tactic, but normally when we see SK play, they don't sit back and wait. They will aggressively push every single lane, get down these outer turrets and use them, and the minions obviously pushing further into the enemy territory to get that extra information and vision, because they don't really buy the wards. But honestly, if you don't buy wards against this comp from Elements, you're going to get engaged on again and again, and you won't know what's hitting you.
You'll be in some trouble, and you definitely won't if you can't see it. So we'll see maybe if they change that up just a little bit
They
here.
have to.
They're undefeated so far. They're still facing down a very tough team in Elements who did have that one early loss, but they hadn't lost until then. This is such a tough order for both teams, I feel like, to face off against one another. And their styles are so interestingly kind of mix and match up here because SK is going to want to fight this out, but they have to go and get the damage down early against this comp. We'll see how it works out for them with those picks locked in. Let us know if you still think either Elements or SK are going to take this one with the hashtags EL win or SK win. Tweet those at LOL Esports. I think you'll have something to say. The crowd certainly does. As this game is getting ready to get underway, they're excited. The stamps, the claps. It is the final game of the day and the final game of week 3. Elements versus SK Gaming, and here we go, onto the Rift.
And these two comps here will give us a very explosive game. Alliance, Elements, obviously, used to be Alliance. All about getting in that hard engage. Massive AoE coming in, massive amounts of CC, where SK, they want to disengage first, and then you can re-engage later once the ultis are gone from Wicked, ultis are gone from Froggen. That's when you want to fight. So N-rated on this Janna here. He needs to play it perfectly in these team fights. And SK have to invest into some wards so they can see the Rengar coming. You need those pink wards down, otherwise he can just catch you out.
Bit of an early invade here for Elements. Not placing down too many wards just yet, but they've got plenty of time to do that. As this game starts off, you see Reckless making the move himself. Does do that one. So you mentioned the potential lane swap ability here, and they are going to be on the lookout for just one.
Yeah, again, Elements looking for that lane swap against SK. Tough lanes all around, both in the bottom lane and obviously in the top lane. For them, if N-rated once again times the Hurricane correctly, he will be able to stop Nif from engaging onto him in the lane. And this one actually stayed alive. Let's see what we get. Still staying on the top side of the map from Elements. A lot of pings going on, yeah.
But also, you see Forgiven and hanging back at the very edge of all that.
So they're trying to wait for the ward to disappear, but they couldn't wait long enough because the minions were already on their way to the lane. So they have to go in there and actually start either setting up their freeze, which it doesn't look like they want to do. Instead, but actually Crooks for himself. Knowing that now they've been spotted by Elements, so they know Elements have now gone down to the bottom wave, and it's too late for them to set up a freeze anyway for Forgiven and N-rated. So they just take some extra XP and gold before they go over to this lane, which is going to be an empty lane anyway, with Reckless and Nif in the bottom lane.
That one starts off. Freddy, dueling it out. Oh, pretty low against those Raptors, actually.
This is a very standard style though by SK in terms of lane swapping. They always get a camp for Freddy, so he gets early level 2. He goes back to base, often buys a ward with it or some potions, and then he teleports down to the bottom lane or runs all the way down to the bottom lane, depending on how much pressure there is from the minions. And then he basically sits there in a 1v2 situation. He doesn't get help from Svenskar normally. He doesn't get help from N-rated because N-rated always wants to fast push together with Forgiven. So I want to see if Elements now has done their homework, knowing there's a very high chance of Freddy staying alone in the bottom lane, so you can dive him very easily with your jungler and your top laner. For now, they're moving to the bottom side.
I think Reckless definitely discovered that just a moment ago. Already at half health, but Freddy's able to sustain up. Those biscuits definitely helping him out. On the other side of the equation, Wicked is not able to get to that top lane just yet. Still playing out the double farm game. Helps Shook out, clearing the ward.
And look at the minimap here. Svenskar goes back to base. Do you want to go bot lane to help my top lane? Nah, not at all. I'm just going to go straight red buff here. Nif, N-rated is still sitting in the top wave or top lane, pushing it in with Forgiven, so there's no help from Freddy. And this is the first team to punish Freddy and SK Gaming from doing this very greedy lane swap, where he's basically left on his own. Normally he gets free farm, people don't punish him. Elements, they did this time around, forced him away from the turret. Still not enough, however. I'm not sure why Wicked and Shook is backing away now, actually allowing Freddy to go back in and pick up some farm, because he's going to get so far ahead compared to Wicked now.
Yeah, Wicked's...
It looks so good, and then they backed away.
Yeah, the Doran shield start too. He's going to be very behind in items if this keeps up for a little while. Forgiven and N-rated, still freely pushing the slow push up in the top. It's a little bit of a strange start here to this game.
Yeah.
Oh, they've caught Freddy though.
Freddy.
Here we go, Reckless, the damage is enough. He flashes, he dashes, and he gets away, but it was close.
That was a good catch, though, because Freddy wanted to try and save the tower. This one is going to go down. Notice how now SK let the tower kill all the minions, so they won't be pushing down towards Elements in this case. So they let the tower clean out everything. Nothing left for Wicked. Going to do another wave. And then, actually in this case, because they decided to kill this wave and not the tower, they're gonna have to push it all the way down because they can't wait for the tower to do all the work. So now they have to push it down to the second turret. Wicked will be able to get a lot of farm and XP, so not really sure why they actually touched this minion. They should have left it alone, finish off the turret, and then just backed away so the two waves would meet and actually be equally strong. And then Wicked wouldn't be able to pick up a lot of extra farm, which he will now when he's in the lane.
Back to the mid. Froggen dealt a bit of harass onto Fox, who's just able to not take any more backs away there. Nif and Reckless still zoning away Freddy, although he does get a little bit of poke and answer himself. He hasn't been able to pick up much farm here. It's very difficult against this deadly bot lane.
Right now, he just wants to save the turret, and Red is already here, so the tower will stay alive. Elements didn't push it hard enough because they went back into the jungle with Rumble and Rengar instead of trying to punish Azir here. So still an edge or advantage for SK. They got the turret, will be able to defend the next one, and BF Sword picked up for Forgiven, so he won't get pushed in this lane here.
Yeah, now we do finally get to see if when he makes his move down here. He's already stated it once, best bot lane by far. Can he back it up?
Yeah, definitely a good start for him. Also with the tower giving him the extra gold so he could get the BF Sword, because Reckless right now is sitting on 1,300 gold for himself. So he can actually go back because he needs to get a BF Sword as well. That's why he's forced to stay in the lane, despite only having a Doran's Blade into the BF Sword of Forgiven. So he will lose a lot of CS. He will even lose a lot of HP on his tower when he's forced to go back, and a bad timing for him. So that tower really meant a lot for SK, getting that extra goal for Forgiven.
Yeah, nice movement there by SK Gaming, and of course, having that timely back, being able to defend.
Oh, this is not good for Reckless.
No, it is not indeed.
Realizing that he can't even stay in the lane, so he has to go back to base. Only gets the pickaxe instead of the BF Sword for Forgiven. So falling pretty far behind in this lane, and will still take a lot of damage. But Shook onto Svenskeren.
Flag and drag away, and a flash to top it off as Froggen scares him further back. Meanwhile, down bot lane, Forgiven. Unrated, poke it out, but Nif is still there for the defense.
And this really is the SK tactic. You fast push in the lane so to get the first tower, then you swap back down to the bottom lane where your tower is still alive because your top lane has played very greedy and he's staying alone and just trying to wave clear. If you manage to defend it, you get this edge here early on. We see for Forgiven now compared to Reckless. And then you just keep playing very aggressive. You keep pushing the lane over and over. Take the next turret. And once all the outer turrets are gone, because again you need the minions to push further into the territory of elements, then it gives you more vision because they again can push in there. You don't get the wards down, but that's how you get your information. And these slow pushes they're going to build up become stronger and stronger and more deadly as well, forcing elements then to go back and defend. And that's how SK later in the game is going to just take over the map, at least from what we have seen beforehand, and just get all the dragons, time these minion waves really well, and play around them.
SK Gaming now going for a bit of jungle control, grabbing this blue buff. Hopefully giving that one over to Freddy, and Elements are none the wiser about it, so they get that one for free. Wicked, not been quite so starved on CS now that he's had a little bit of free time to himself. Freddy and he will continue to trade it out just a little bit. Meanwhile, down in the bot lane as well, Reckless still looking for an in here onto Forgiven.
Yeah, not too surprising. Forgiven is the AD carry in the EU LCS who has their largest CS lead at 10 and 20 minutes on average in his games. Gonna be the same in this one. 13 CS ahead of Reckless, only 8 minutes in. That's really just because, again, the poorly timed back from Reckless here. Either you go back earlier before Forgiven shows up in the lane, get your pickaxe, or you stay for that BF sword. Decided to go do something in between and therefore lost a lot of CS for it.
Yeah, and SK grabs that other blue buff too, so they've gotten both of the ones on the map here. Froggen not going to be able to have that regen. However, this has been a very quiet mid lane, not too surprisingly when Froggen's involved.
Yeah, and Shook, not level 6 yet, so he hasn't really been able to camp the lane. And we see obviously Ari playing very far back, respecting the gank from Elements, knowing that if I don't die right now, the rest of my lanes are doing just fine. And we definitely want to get this Azir scaling into the late game for Freddy.
Yeah, Shook had a pretty monster performance on Rengar yesterday. However, still below that level 6 threshold. Looks like he just gets it
now.
Perfectly timed. There we go. And now, let's see if he can make a difference.
Look at the pink ward here placed by Elements just behind the dragon. Allowing Shook to sit in there, pop his ulti, knowing there's no wards to spot him when he actually activates the stealth. He's going down towards the bottom lane though.
And Rated smelled something was up. Moves right out of that brush.
And no wards though to spot it. Forgiven. I think it's safe and wise.
It's going to be just a bit of spent time for Shook. Meanwhile, Svenskeren is looking for Froggen, who will be able to make his great escape. Deny the kill in the mid lane.
That was very close. Froggen just managed to activate his claw and actually get out of there. Didn't have to throw anything. Didn't have flash. Didn't actually get to see when he used it.
Now the claw decides who lives and who dies.
Exactly.
Find the Skull Crab as well. Yeah.
Good. 82 gold for Svenskeren. And obviously now, notice as well how SK always plays around Dragon. Freddy will push out his lane, and then he's gonna walk from top lane down towards the mid lane. Then he sits in the mid lane and just keeps farming, keeps farming. If he's not needed at the Dragon, he just walks straight back to top lane, and he never stops farming, he never uses his teleport, he saves it, and because he's controlling the lane, it simply means that Wicked couldn't do anything to stop him from pushing it down. And first Dragon for SK. Once again, they've only given up one Dragon in the LCS.
Well, 2 now.
2 now.
True.
SK
Well, they traded the other one. Oh, you mean Elements, excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah, SK has only given up one Dragon so far in the LCS, if I'm correct.
I think there was one yesterday.
Oh,
Anyways.
2 Dragons then, who cares?
So they did trade one for a Baron. It was quite good. But SK Gaming, yeah, they have that impeccable control. And they have a lot of burst damage as well. Forgiven
is going to be able to take this tower once Reckless goes back to base, because Reckless is falling behind an item.
Yep.
And Forgiven keeps pushing. That's also why Svenskeren is showing himself in this bottom lane.
Shook's here too, though. They check a little too far forward. Forgiven.
Yeah, you don't want to take that three versus
but he knows
3
something
your
about.
elements. It's going to be a tower from SK very, very soon.
Svenskeren preparing to back away. This tower's starting
he
to get fired
recalls.
down. If he does leave, yeah. It's
Oh,
dangerous.
that's good.
It's a game of chicken in these brushes. Unsighted, of course. Froggen gonna head back to the mid. Wicked's actually moving here as well. This is gonna give some free farm over to Freddy. They'll just continue to trade that one out. So it's been a lot of searching, sniffing for openings for elements. SK have just gotten a little bit better of it thanks to that dragon.
Shook is sitting right in the mid lane.
Yes, he is.
No way for SK to spot him on his own turret. Oh,
Foxu does not
going
connect
in.
the charm. The claw will not be followed up. Svenskeren was there. Oh, wait a minute. Fox goes a little far forward. There's first blood. All of a sudden, Shook is going to go ahead and grab it.
Exactly like yesterday. Same deal here. Shook sits at his own turret in the mid lane, pops his ulti, and Froggen obviously goes in and just locks down whoever he's playing against.
And an immediate pause.
We have to, of course, talk about how Shook yesterday, 100% kill participation on Rengar, highest KDA as well on day 1. Really, really looked good, and good start for him with this, with the first spot.
Yeah, they do pick that one up. So Shook really got rolling quite a lot. They were able to funnel that gold to him and get him quite ahead so he could make this big impact and make these big plays yesterday. That could be the start of something for Elements.
A little bit surprised we see Morel Nomic on first item on Ahri here. Typically, the new Ahri here in 5.2, when you play against double AP, you actually go Abyssal Scepter first. So you get that tankiness, you get, of course, the magic resist, and would try at least help you stay alive when Froggen makes these plays on you, but wasn't really the deciding factor this time around. He would have died anyway, no matter what.
Yeah, I think they had quite a lot of damage, and they even threw down the equalizer for just the insurance policy of all that. His health bar melted pretty quickly in that situation. And I feel like, despite that, of course, SK still doing pretty solid. They've still got a decent gold lead built up.
Yeah.
It's 2 towers to 1.
This
the
is
one dragon.
actually,
They're more proactive here, it seems.
it's actually 2 towers to 0 because it's an Azir turret.
Oh, it's right.
Big
Ah, it
kill.
got me.
So SK, again, running the exact same early game as we've seen in every single game they played. A lot of focus on early pushing down these towers, getting the global lead, get the item advantage. That's, again, why they actually refuse to buy a lot of wards, because they feel like that gold should be invested into items, and you get ahead that way. It's a bit of a different tactic, but so far it has been working for them. And obviously, again, with the bot lane, Forgiven, being able to stay ahead of Reckless meant he just killed the bottom lane turret before we went to this pause. So 2 towers for SK,
Yeah.
0. Don't get fooled by this single Azir turret.
It's going to keep getting me every time
Yeah,
until
I mean, it will.
change, you know, but that's okay. So 2 towers, yeah, they've got a decent advantage in the objective game. They've managed to get themselves ahead by a dragon as well. So SK continuing that same tactic that has won them a 5-game win streak. And Elements, they're a team that likes to wait it out to the later stages anyways, to where they're feeling comfortable, to where Reckless and Froggen can step up and put on the carry pants. But does that just play into SK's hand while they just grab everything they want around the map?
Yeah, honestly, it will, because we know SK will take the dragons. They do it every single time, and we know with this Azir late game, they don't even mind going late.
Yeah, I really don't. So now we're going to go ahead and take a look at the analyst desk right now because the early game having some issues here. Let's check in with Shox and see what she has to say.
Yeah, the analyst desk is still here, and so are we, and it actually gives us an opportunity to break down what happened there early in the game. And, well, SK taking their dragons early again, like they always do. And actually, SK Gaming doing what they always do in the early game, and you mentioned Elements should have seen that coming.
So far in every lane swap that SK has been doing, like Freddy is gonna get 1 camp. He's gonna hit level 2. He's gonna TP bottom. Gonna try to defend the wave. He has done so with Ken. He has done so with Azir now. What should have happened for Elements is that either they proxy the wave as 3 men, like have Leona roaming off of bottom lane, let Rackets basically be alone on the wave, push it in, and see what Freddy's doing. Like, if the wave is proxied, there's no way he can defend that turret because he's basically naked at the turret. So he's gonna die. The other option would have been that Rumble stays around the area, allows Shook basically to walk back into the jungle and risk a 3v1 or a 3v2 dive. They had knowledge of Svenska starting bottom side because that is the greedy start that SK has been doing all season long. So there was no risk in it whatsoever, and they just forgot what to do, basically.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with that. SK have consistently done the same strategy in their lane swaps. Every time they have a lane swap, they do this greedy start that Amazing was talking about. Deficio spelled it out last week, literally. 3 minutes ahead predicting every single move that SK did, and they, like clockwork, they performed. The question is, SK is doing a good strat, they're punishing their opponents. Why is Elements not proactive enough? Why is it that we can sit on the desk, we can see it, Deficio can see it, Amazing can see it, but Elements in-game or not?
It could have a lot to do with their game planning. Like, they may be a team that sees the game on a different level. For example, they have the kill potential in mid, which they focus on maybe even a bit too much, but that's the game plan. Get strong rolling and have that going for them.
I've got a question about that mid plan. I'm not a particular fan of Rengar without some sort of movement speed buff in the comp. It is working for Elements. It worked yesterday. As a jungler yourself, what's your take on this sort of Rengar plus Lasana? Yes, it's scary, but what about the bigger picture, the bigger game as a whole? What's your opinion on the combo?
If the enemy team has some kind of disengage and actually is able to slow down the initial Rengar engage or the Lasana engage, or maybe evade it completely, there's nothing that Froggen and Shook are actually able to do, because, as you said, like, there's no movement speed of coming in. There's no aftermath after the initial ults.
So if Enrated's on point
Yep.
and in Monsoons, that's the safety net for SK once they get into this mid game?
Exactly. Then once the QSS is coming in for Grace or for Lucian in this case, like, because he's playing Lucian. Sorry. Once that is coming in and Jenna is actually on top with her Monsoons and with her Qs, like the Q already, like if he hits that during the Rengar initial ult and the initial jump bowler, it's really hard for Elements to get an engage off.
Yeah, Reckles did steal that Graves away, as you've seen. We're not quite in the mid-game yet after the initial lane swap. We're in the standard lanes. Let's talk through that. The Rumble versus Azir matchup, Wicked might suffer in that one.
Yeah, Azir should actually be able to win the lane. It's kind of hard right now because, as far as I remember, like, he already has a top turret down. They're 1v1 in the top lane, so he has a longer lane that he's playing on. But 1v1, if they're actually able to get some ward coverage, which SK is like not doing that much, he should be able to push him in and create pressure for his team.
I really want to see how Wicked actually performs on this Rumble. You know, we're seeing a champion that you don't traditionally associate with Wicked as a player. Rumble's quite this oddball. It's got this bruiser element to it, but it's also got this spell casting. The importance of your equalizer cannot be understated, especially as we start roaming towards the follow-up dragons that are potentially going to come into play. On the other side, you've got Freddy, who has demonstrated a clear mastery over the top lane. He's always rolled with the meta. He's always adapted to however the LCS is meant to play. And we heard from him in a week or 2 weeks ago saying this is the first split with expectation on his shoulders. He's got a champion like Azir who can hard carry. He's a player who's got the ability. And I actually think if you're looking at that top lane matchup, Freddy, in theory, has got the tools to win it and help SK get even further ahead.
He was also mentioning in the interview, yeah, I don't let the pressure that much get to me, and he rather speaks by his actions on the Rift. Turning to another lane, we have the 2 versus 2. We have Forgiven up against Reckless, and it is Janna Lucian up against Leona Graves in that one. Forgiven said in the interview, I always keep farming until I need to be in a team fight. Reckless kind of does the same, so we're just going to see this bottom lane at infinitum.
Maybe, but so far, like as we've seen, like SK has a different focus than Elements does. He's saying that he wants to farm a lot and he wants to wait until he's farmed enough to get into mid-game teamfights. But honestly, that's not what SK is about. SK is about pushing the advantage and actually trying to get the global lead. We have explained that in the lane swap. Like that's the main goal. And afterwards, even that, like he's gonna be the one that is gonna get those turrets on and basically advance the game for his team.
I want to see how Reckless plays the next few minutes because the lane swap actually went in favor of Forgiven. DeFisher was touching on it during the cast, saying that Forgiven had a good back timing. He farmed up an extra wave. He was able to get a pickaxe first back, whereas Reckless was forced to get boots. Forgiven got a BF sword first back, and it was Reckless that got a pickaxe and boots on his first back. The only reason I highlight that, despite the fact you can see on the pause screen the items are the same now, it hasn't been that way for a few minutes. And with Reckless actually being fairly outspoken about his respect for Forgiven and him saying quite bluntly, Forgiven was better than me last year, I wonder what pressure this puts on a player like Reckless who has problems at times. He called out his team earlier in the week. You can't forget about that. How is he going to handle it? And I can't wait to see when we eventually get back in game.
Yeah, let's then also turn to the supports as it is so integral to that duo lane. And we've been talking a lot about, you touched on Vander today as being a mechanically super strong support. We don't actually talk that much about Nif as if we all named as all those players, and Enrated might have the edge here.
Yeah, I definitely think that Enrated is a superior support to Nif, but that's because N-Rated brings more to the team than Nif does. From what I've heard, and that's the discussions that Tabs basically initiated when he made the Ask a Fan posts, I remember that Nif seems to be someone that is somewhat silent. N-Rated, as far as I'm concerned, he's someone that brings shot calling to the team, knowledge to the team, and actually orchestrates a lot of movements, which is why I would put N-Rated above Nif. On lane, Forgiven is someone that demands his support to be mechanically solid, and you saw the development in Unlimited in the Spring split. We see the same case here. N-Rated is someone, last split he had a weaker lane AD carry in Candy Panda, but now he has a strong AD carry on lane, and he has to go with the flow. And Forgiven is demanding that out of him, and he has talked about too.
I actually find that quite interesting because I think you're 100% right. I do feel that N-Rated is a more cerebral player than Nif, but I actually think when it comes to game mechanics and actual in-game play, you look at N-Rated's Annie-game, it left a lot to be desired. N-Rated has played great on the supporty champions. His Lulu in particular, it shines, even though it's off meta at the moment. But last year, he was playing support Galio. He was playing these oddball picks. I feel the value of that cerebral approach has to be more important because if you gave Forgiven a more mechanically adept support who could play the Leonas, could play the Threshers a bit more, well, the question you have to ask is how much better does Forgiven get in lane? It's give and take. But I do agree, Nif does seem to be the silent support on the side lanes. He's got so many massive carries along the rest of the team. You seldom actually look at that lane when you look at Elements.
Yeah, and it will be interesting to see what N-Rated can do on that Janna. I actually think it could be something with the disengage that he could do because he reads the game so well.
Yeah, I actually agree with that. I think supporty, disengage, safety champions suit him better when he has to read a situation and say, should I do something or shouldn't I? As opposed to a Leona, a Annie, a Thresh, something that's a bit more involved, so to speak, landing skill shot after skill shot while simultaneously picking your moments. So I do think Janna suits his playstyle more.
All right, we've almost gone through all the lanes, but we've got one more, Fox versus Froggen. And in the last couple of weeks, we've been talking about SK Gaming and how Fox didn't need to shine yet. He was doing his job. He had some good games on Kassadin flanking as well. In this one, this might be one of those where he has to step over. He could shine as Ahri in this one. Froggen just had a successful gank from Rengar from Shook in that one. Do you think that the Ahri presence will be very important here in this one? Will Fox have to step up?
I don't think so. Due to how SK is operating through the early game, they don't care as much about the mid lane, to be honest. They are fine with mid lane just farming up and getting the items that he needs to actually compete in the team fights. SK is fully focused on the side lanes more so than none. Therefore, I don't think he has to shine because Forgiven, Freddy, Svenskern are bringing so much presence to the team that he just needs to be existing and not be a negative force in the team.
Yeah, I actually agree with that theory. You know, Fox, he's playing confidently. Yes, he gave up first blood, but that was after he's tried to set up a gank. He tried to jump onto Froggen. It's one of these things that you seldom don't talk about. You're looking at Froggen, one of the all-time gods of the European mid lane, who's been around almost as long as the game has existed on a professional level. There's no more old guard around. FLICKR is, you know, playing Challenger at the moment. He's not in the LCS. You've got Alex Sitch, hasn't been around for a little while. All of the old big names are falling by the wayside. And here you've got this young upstart Fox who's got the audacity to spirit rush into Froggen. Unfortunately, it didn't work out this time. But I think, you know, there's a lot to be said about that mindset in a game like this where everybody is watching.
Yeah, how dare he, Fox?
Yeah.
Got it coming. Looking at how the game is progressing right now, and as we see it progressing into the mid game, you said you think you can give it to SK for the edge and the fact that they have that disengaged. So what is Elements' next step?
I mean, Elements' next step is, first of all, they got to kill it right now, so they probably are able to use their mid priority because they clear the wave, they probably get a push onto the turret. They should get control of one side, wait for the cooldowns to be back up, and basically compete for the Drake that is coming up.
SK doesn't want to give it up. And the problem for SK, or the risk that SK put themselves in, if they do set up for a dragon and Elements decides to fight, the power of Lissandra and Rumble in that sort of choke point, in that zone, is terrifying. So if Froggen can get in with a good glacial path and you put an equalizer down, yes, Azir is very powerful and you can put a wall up, but that's not going to stop the damage from Rumble, the damage from Lissandra. So there's a very, very scary moment leading up.
Yep, there is. I'm actually almost out of things to say for this matchup. Is there anything else we can look at in this one? The nerfs coming in with a long pause like this, amazing. You're all set up. You're ready to go. The lane swap is over. You're in your direct lane opponent. Bam, pause. And there's no one who can step in. You can't talk. How will that influence the players?
It depends on the player. Like, some people are more adept so than not, where they are actually able to translate what they did earlier to the next steps and actually like keep the focus up. But it completely depends on the player. But I think the veterans that are both teams, like, that exist on both teams, are able to actually keep that up. So I'm not worried for them.
Yeah, I want to see how well these teams do bounce back, because again, there's this high pressure scenario. You've got this moment where everybody's looking, they've all fired up. I think the big pressure is going to be on Reckless, and I would dare say on the likes of, you know, Shook, if you're looking at the side of Elements, and Rated on the other hand. How is he going to handle Forgiven? I actually want to ask what it's like playing with Forgiven in the team, because this is a guy that, you know, you touched on the fact he demands a lot. This is a guy who's actually fairly emotional in his play because he holds everybody to the standard that he plays.
Yeah, that's exactly what he does. Like, I remember the spring split when we played and we had a couple of issues coming in where we lost, I think, 4 out of our first 10 games, or maybe even more. 4 out of our first 14, I think, even. He was sad. He was not happy with the way we were playing. He demanded that everyone, like literally everyone, not just his lane, but everyone plays more solo queue and plays up to his standard, where he wants to be. He sees his team, and he sees a team where that has to be at the top of the standings to represent what he thinks he can do as a player. And to be frank, he's accomplishing that. He accomplished that with us to a certain extent. With a close series versus Alliance, if I remember correctly, we probably should have won. But it's like, I don't want to come with PJ Salt or anything like that. But he's someone that is a driving force behind his own team, and that's why, as an AD carry, he's one of the few AD carries that I consider MVP worthy, because he has this competitive drive coming in.
What pressure does that put on you? I mean, you've got this guy, yeah, he's demanding XYZ. Is he really that flawless that you're like, actually, I have to just sit and take this?
I mean, everyone has some kind of flaws, but it's not even just like, if you have flaws, obviously you gotta work on them. But the thing is that what he does is just like, he sees a mistake in his own play, he revisits that mistake in his own play, and in the next game, he's not gonna do it anymore. And that's the standard he holds his team to. It doesn't even matter if he basically does bad one game. He's going to bounce back 100% because he has the work ethic coming in.
Talking about Forgiven as MVP, Elements GG's Twitter account actually tweeted before this one, are you going to be the MVP at Shook? By far. That was a funny one from them coming in, putting up Shook as the MVP. Guys, you probably felt it coming. We need to take a brief break as we resolve this issue some players are experiencing involving auto attacks on stage. But we'll be back in a few moments for the continuation of Elements versus SK Gaming. Don't touch that browser.